Tsongkhapa. So a little over, well, 601 years ago, right, this year. And also it's the, yeah, as Shanti mentioned, the anniversary of, I think this year just happens to fall on the same day. Because Lama Tsongkhapa Day is set according to the Tibetan calendar. So it's on a different Gregorian calendar day every year. But His Holiness Peace Prize Day is always according to the Gregorian calendar. So this year they happen to fall on the same day, I think. So what I thought to do was, but I'm open to suggestions to you all. But I was thinking to do mostly like some prayers actually, and then explain a little bit of the prayer where it's called Destiny Fulfilled, where Tsongkhapa explains his own kind of method of study and practice in his life. But I thought would do like just very briefly do Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga at first with a little meditation. And then I'll explain a little bit of the Destiny Fulfilled in Lama Tsongkhapa's life, and especially try to remember some of the points that His Holiness made this morning in his teaching this morning. And then I thought we can recite and maybe briefly meditate on the songs of spiritual experience, which is the Lam-Rim prayer. It's one of the shorter I guess it's one of the short Lam-Rims that Lama Tsongkhapa wrote. Of the Lam-Rim prayers he composed, it's one of the longer ones. But that's also His Holiness taught that this morning, very briefly. And then I thought we'll dedicate with another Lam-Rim. It's called the Lam-Rim dedication prayer. It comes at the end of the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. That's a fairly short dedication prayer. So that's what I'm have in mind. We have about an hour and 20 minutes. But I also try to make time, if you guys have any questions, to try to discuss any questions you might have. So does that sound okay? Yeah, okay, Maya's on board. Okay, Carl, okay, good. And all the people on YouTube, they're not in the Zoom room, so they just have to follow along, whatever we decide to do. Yeah, okay. Then let's do a little Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga first. So I'll share my screen. The way we'll do it is I'll share my screen, and then you'll be able to see the verses that we'll recite, and I'll explain kind of as we go through. But yeah, get comfortable in your meditation posture. So I'll share my screen now. Well, I don't know. I'll wait a bit until we actually do the prayers from there before I share my screen. So get comfortable in your meditation posture. And bring your mind within. Maybe watch your breath or watch your mind, but focus your attention on one object of meditation for a few moments to concentrate your attention. And then visualize yourself surrounded by all sentient beings, beginning with your father of this life to your right, and all your male family and friends to your right and behind you. Then your mother of this life immediately at your left, and all your female friends, family and friends to your left and behind you. Just briefly bring them to mind and remember their kindness to you in this life. And then imagine seated directly in front of you, facing towards you, people whom you're most prone to become angry with or irritated at. And remember how important it is to practice, to put special effort into practicing kindness and gratitude towards such people and patience. And then imagine all the other sentient beings who don't fit in the category of antagonist or friend. So all the beings of the six realms, imagine them all in human form seated around you. And remember how in all of our past lives, in samsara, in this life, in all future lives, every pleasurable experience, every happiness or good fortune we ever enjoy, all comes about in dependence upon sentient beings, all the way up to full enlightenment. And any benefit we receive from our own spiritual teachers and the Dharma, all comes about in dependence upon the kindness of other sentient beings. So I think I'm engaging in this session in order not only to benefit oneself, but also in order to benefit all sentient beings by freeing them from every form of suffering and creating causes for their liberation and enlightenment. For that purpose, I myself must quickly become enlightened, and therefore I'll engage in this session. So try to generate a bodhicitta motivation like that. Remember what His Holiness said in the teaching this morning, which is His Holiness emphasizes almost every talk he gives these days. These two lines from the prayer for generating bodhicitta and taking the bodhisattva vow that we usually use. In English, it's something like because it brings about the welfare of myself and others. Therefore, I generate bodhicitta. Right? So His Holiness emphasizes how this attitude of bodhicitta is beneficial for ourselves, it's beneficial, very beneficial for others, and therefore we should generate it as a motivation for all the activities we engage in. Okay, so now I'll share my screen and we'll do the refuge prayer. So visualize the field of refuge. Oh, so we can visualize, Lama Tsongkhapa or Shakyamuni Buddha, as you like. So, whatever field of refuge, visualize in space before you. Maybe it's good to visualize Lama Tsongkhapa because it is Lama Tsongkhapa Day. Doesn't really make any difference because, you know, the Buddha, the Shakyamuni Buddha, Lama Tsongkhapa, they're all one essence with all of the enlightened beings and one essence with their own spiritual teachers. Visualize Lama Tsongkhapa in the space in front. To his right is Gyaltsab Dharma Rinchen. To his left is Kidrup, Gelik Palsampo, Kidrup Jen. They're each seated atop a small throne upon billowing white clouds, and surrounded by countless other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So think that they embody the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Again, the one essence with one's own spiritual teacher, be it His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Lama Zopa Rinpoche or others. And they have the ability to protect us from suffering of samsara and to lead us to full enlightenment, because over countless lifetimes, they themselves have traveled the entire path from the state of an ordinary being like us to the state of a fully enlightened being. And then manifested in this aspect of Tsongkhapa and his two spiritual sons, and manifest in countless other aspects to benefit sentient beings primarily by teaching the Dharma, and also by establishing and preserving the Sangha, the ordained Sangha, by giving the vows of Getsos, Getsomas, fully ordained monks and nuns. So then imagine, so remember the field of refuge in front, and then also all sentient beings seated around. Imagine together we all go for refuge. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And then we'll briefly recite and then meditate on the four immeasurable thoughts. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free from the closeness of attachment and the distance of hatred. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to achieve Buddhahood. May they achieve Buddhahood. I myself will cause them to achieve Buddhahood. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from suffering and its causes. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never separated from the happiness of higher rebirth and liberation. May they never be separated from these. I myself will cause them to be never separated from these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So again, remember this the visualization of all sentient beings seated around you, and briefly try to generate these four immeasurable attitudes of equanimity, wishing that all sentient beings, well, first of all, generating a sense of equal concern for all sentient beings, and then the intention that may all sentient beings have a sense of equal concern for each other, not biased by attachment or hatred. And then immeasurable love, wishing that all sentient beings have every happiness up to full enlightenment. Immeasurable compassion, wishing that all sentient beings are free from every form of suffering. And then immeasurable joy, wishing that all sentient beings are never separated from the joy of liberation and enlightenment. So briefly meditate on those four attitudes. Okay, so now we can do the actual Guru Yoga practice, Ganden Lagyama, which is, so the name is named after the first four syllables of the parent Tibetan. But we'll recite it in English, a little slowly, and just try to visualize and just reflect on the meaning. So basically it's a 7-limb prayer. The first verse describes just the visualization. And then there's an immediate request for Tsongkhapa to remain. And then, what is it? Then there's a verse of prostration, a verse of offerings, and so forth. I'll pause at basically each, and we'll try to reflect on each verse a little bit. Okay, so the first just visualize again. Lama Tsongkhapa. We're already visualizing, but refresh your visualization of Lama Tsongkhapa and the space in front. So especially try to not make it not just a static dead image, but imagine, Lama Tsongkhapa was a person just like us. And his mental continuum still exists now. So try to feel that, and he's a fully enlightened being, so he knows when we're thinking about him. So try to feel like by us giving our attention to Lama Tsongkhapa, he actually is in the space before us. And to symbolize his presence, then we visualize, his body, wearing the robes of a fully ordained monk, seated cross-legged on a throne supported by 8 snow lions. And remembering his great compassion and affection for all of his disciples and all sentient beings. Imagine he looks upon you with great kindness and affection. And his right hand is held at his heart with the forefinger and the thumb touching, and the pinky and the ring finger and the middle finger extended. So this represents he's teaching. It's the teaching mudra. So he's teaching the 3 wheels of Dharma, or the 3 baskets of the Buddha's teachings. And then his left hand is in his lap, the palm face up, and it holds a scripture, right, representing his extensive study and practice of the Buddhist teachings, and also his effort in meditation. Okay, so let's read the prayer. From the heart of the Savior of the 100 deities of Tushita, on the peak of a cloud resembling a clump of extremely white, fresh curd, King of Dharma, omniscient Tsongkhapa, please come here together with your sons. So we request Lama Tsongkhapa to come to the space before us. So imagine our minds connect with Lama Tsongkhapa's holy mind. And then we request Lama Tsongkhapa to remain. In the sky before me on a lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit for my mind of faith. Please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Right, so we make a request for Lama Tsongkhapa, who's one essence with our own spiritual teachers and all the Buddhas, to remain for 100 eons, which is just symbolic of eternally, as far as long as sentient beings are cycling in samsara and need guidance, need help. For that long, Guru Lama Tsongkhapa remain and guide us and others. And then we make prostrations by remembering the qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa's body, speech, and mind. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be. Your holy speech, with its excellent explanations, is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful, with glory renowned. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Right, so think of some of Lama Tsongkhapa's positive qualities of his body, speech, and especially of his mind. And then imagine making prostrations. You can visualize maybe making prostrations and just folding one's hands in mudra prostration. So we pay homage to Tsongkhapa. And then we imagine making offerings. So imagine the sky, so you can imagine radiating from one's heart, and the sky all around, and the space all around in front of us is filled with beautiful offerings. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lights, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme offerings from your heart. They're all in the nature of bliss and emptiness, and they're received by Lama Tsongkhapa and all the other figures in the merit field. And Tsongkhapa and all the other beings in the merit field are extremely pleased, and our offerings increase their mind of bliss and compassion and wisdom, realizing emptiness. So imagine all the Buddhas are pleased by offering, and then we confess whatever negative actions we've done, whatever non-virtues of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I have collected from beginningless time. I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. So briefly try to generate the four opponent powers, and especially generate regret, remembering all the negative actions we've done in this life and countless previous lives, and openly confessing them without hiding them for even 1 second. And then the limb of rejoicing. You strove. So this verse actually, His Holiness cited and spoke about, kind of as he was beginning to explain the most important things about Lama Tsongkhapa's life this morning. His Holiness quoted this verse and said this is kind of the essence of Lama Tsongkhapa's life. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age. So you strove for much learning. That means studying, right? Lama Tsongkhapa studied extensively, and also composed many commentaries, and practice, right? So that means he put effort into meditating, teaching, making offerings and prayers, all different forms of practice. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age, and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful. So that's what we're referring to as precious human life. Made it meaningful by doing things which are a benefit to himself and others, by abandoning the 8 worldly concerns, right? So His Holiness just stressed that that's extremely important, to engage in Buddhist practice without a faulty motivation, wishing for fame for oneself, wishing for praise and adulation for oneself. So all these egoistic motivations, wishing to accumulate wealth or power, and wishing just for worldly pleasure and enjoyment of just this life for oneself alone. So Lama Tsongkhapa strove in learning and practice with a motivation free from the 8 worldly concerns. And then finally the last line, Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Right, so spend a moment just rejoicing, and whatever you know of Lama Tsongkhapa's deeds and qualities, spend a moment rejoicing, thinking how excellent it is, how wonderful, that he's benefited so many beings during his lifetime and in the 600 years since. Okay, and then the request to turn the wheel of Dharma. Perfect, pure, holy guru from the building, holy gurus from the building clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Right, so we pray that the Guru, Lama Tsongkhapa, bestow teachings upon us. So usually the verse of requesting the Guru to remain comes after this one. But remember, it was the second verse in this prayer. And this prayer it is immediately at the top as a way of creating an auspicious cause for for the Guru to remain long and never to be separated from the Guru. We put that verse right at the beginning. So then finally, so that's the end of. Is that it? Well, the next comes the dedication and then mandala offering, and then the mixing of mantra. Okay, so then dedication. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teaching and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losamdrapa's teaching to shine forever. So that's the actual last verse of Lam Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, and the rest here is added. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. And then Lama Tsongkhapa always likes to add this verse of prayer to never be separated from Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings by the fifth Dalai Lama. May we meet the teachings of the victorious one, Losamdrapa, who had the morality of an eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the children of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of the two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. And then, we'll skip this instruction and just go straight to the 5-line Miksama. And we'll just recite a few. Maybe we'll recite 3 together, and then we can recite 21. Nectar, light rays, flow all sentient beings, imagine seated around you, purifying them of error, and blessing oneself and all sentient beings to develop all the realizations of the stages of the path to full enlightenment. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion, Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom, Lord of secrets, destroyer of the entire host of Maras, Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the stages of the land of snow, Losamdrapa at your feet on the quest. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion, Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom, Lord of secrets, destroyer of the entire host of Mars, Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the sages of the land of snow, Losamdrapa at your feet I make request. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion, Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom, Lord of secrets, destroyer of the entire host of Mars, Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the sages of the land of snows, Losamdrapa at your feet I make request. So you can recite quietly. So imagine you and all sentient beings are completely purified of every form of suffering, and every cause of suffering is completely eliminated, just like turning on a bright light in a room dispels all the darkness. And imagine you and all sentient beings are filled with every positive quality, is perfectly developed, from guru devotion to renunciation, bodhicitta, wisdom realizing emptiness, generosity, patience, kindness, enthusiasm, perfect concentration, and so forth. Imagine every positive quality on the graduated path to enlightenment is perfectly developed in your mind stream and in the minds of all of those sentient beings. And then finally, we will recite some these two verses of request. May my wisdoms of listening, reflecting, and meditating increase. May my wisdoms of explaining, debating, and composing develop. May I be granted the supreme and common realizations. Please bless me to quickly become like you. May my transcendental wisdom of simultaneously born great bliss arise. May my stains of mistakenly grasping things as real be purified. May my net of doubts that are only mind be cut off. Please bless me to quickly become like you. And there's one more verse. It should be down here. Oh yeah, here, this one. Request to abide at the heart. Magnificent and precious Rukru, please abide on the lotus seat at my heart. Guide me with your great kindness and grant me the realizations of your holy body, speech, and mind. So imagine the Lama Tsongkhapa and the whole merit field before you shrinks to the size of just a drop of water or a grain of rice. A small drop of brilliant light which comes forward and absorbs into your heart. And so imagine Lama Tsongkhapa's mind completely mixes with your own mind, right? And the same happens for every other sentient being around you. Okay, so we'll stop there with the meditation practice. So now let's go through this this prayer where Lama Tsongkhapa describes his own life. It's called The Destiny Fulfilled. Yeah. So I guess when I was thinking about preparing for this session, I think one of the main things when we remember Lama Tsongkhapa's life, one of the most important things to remember is that, you know, at one time in the past, Lama Tsongkhapa was an ordinary person, just like us, with a mind, you know, just like us, and afflictions, and, you know, distractions and frustration and, you know, confusion, just like we have now. But, you know, gradually, not in just one life or two lives or three lives, but from life to life, over many, many, many lives of practice, you know, continual practice and gradually progressing, you know, from one level of realization to the next, then Lama Tsongkhapa achieved the state of full enlightenment, right? So he was said to have achieved enlightenment in the Bardo, or instead of the Bardo, after he passed away. So not in his life as Tsongkhapa, but just at the time of death, he's said to have achieved full enlightenment. So then the question is, well, I mean, why do we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's life as an example to see, well, how did he, I mean, but we have to remember, like, not to have unrealistic expectations for ourselves. Like, when we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's life, we're looking at the last life of a great bodhisattva before he became enlightened, right? So, we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's life to get an idea kind of what direction we should be going in, but we shouldn't have the expectation that we can, if we don't lead our lives exactly like Lama Tsongkhapa did in that life, that we're kind of, it's not enough, right? Rather, we have to kind of think about, well, this is his last life as on the path of a bodhisattva. But as long as we, like His Holiness Dalai Lama emphasizes again and again, the main things are trying to generate bodhicitta to the best of our ability and to reflect again and again on dependent arising and emptiness. So even if we can just do that, or even just generate a kind heart, continually every day generate the motivation to benefit other sentient beings, and then see what, in what ways we can benefit sentient beings according to our different capacities, our different inclinations, our different situations in life, then all of that is going in the same direction, right? Yeah. So let's look at this prayer now, the destiny fulfilled, and see how Tsongkhapa describes his own life. Right. So here it is, destiny fulfilled. It has 3 main sections. Basically, it's kind of the beginning, the middle, and the end of Tsongkhapa's life. So yeah, he explains at the beginning. I'll explain when he explains. So, destiny fulfilled by Jey Tsongkhapa. Om. May we have happiness and excellences. The eyes for the world to see higher realms of life and the freedom of enlightenment. Resting place for those tired from wandering on the paths of cyclic existence. The root of happiness and excellence. My kind gurus, the noble Lord, wisdom treasure, Manjushri, I bow at your feet. So this first verse is a verse of homage, and Tsongkhapa's honoring and prostrating to, making homage to his own gurus, of which he had, how many did he have? Tsongkhapa had a lot of gurus. I want to say 45, but I'm not sure the exact number. Yeah, I don't remember the exact number down, but he had like at least 40, more than 40, maybe even more than 100. I don't remember now. Lama Tsongkhapa gurus from all the 4. At that time, the Gelugpa tradition didn't exist, right? So the Nyingma, Sakya, and Kagyu, gurus from all of those traditions. I mean, all of his gurus belong to one of those traditions. Although there was also that kind of a Kadam lineage, Kadampa lineage at that time. But Lama Tsongkhapa had a special relationship with the Buddha of wisdom, Manjushri. So that's why he kind of says, paying homage to all my gurus and the noble Lord wisdom treasure, which is an epithet of Manjushri, about your feet. So he's saying the gurus are the eyes for seeing the world of higher realms and the freedom of enlightenment. So the path for being able to see the existence of and the path to achieve liberation from samsara and full enlightenment. What enables us to do that is our gurus, and they tirelessly guide us on the path. In the second verse, to gather a great store of merit and wisdom with little effort, rejoicing in virtue is praised as best, particularly regarding the past virtues collected by oneself. If you develop without pride great joy in your virtues of the past, it is said that these past virtues will increase evermore. So Tsongkhapa is explaining kind of like, well, why am I, writing a prayer about my own path of practice, my own way of practice? In one hand, it might seem kind of egotistical and self-centered. So he's explaining the reason I'm doing that, on the one hand, is to rejoice in my own virtues. That's a practice of bodhisattvas. To think about, the positive things we've done in the past or doing in the present, and without pride, right? He makes that qualifier. Without arrogance, without an arrogant pride, but just honestly looking at the good things that we do is really important, right? Not only because it's an antidote to low self-esteem, or it's an antidote to a kind of the laziness of feeling like we cannot do things, but also because we generate merit. It's an easy way to generate a huge amount of merit by just rejoicing in the positive things we've done in the past and others. So that's what he's explaining now. This verse is very often quoted in the context of explaining the benefits of rejoicing. Then the third verse, to accomplish the purpose of this statement by the Buddha. So he's saying that it's not me, the Buddha taught that it's a good practice to rejoice in one's own virtues. To accomplish the purpose of this statement by the Buddha, and also because I see many other purposes as well, it would be good, O mind, to feel such joy. So he's giving advice to his own mind. It would be good for you to feel joy in your own virtuous actions of this life. All this I dedicate for the spread of the teaching. So I'm not doing so just to benefit myself alone, but for the benefit of the Buddha Dharma, which is beneficial to all sentient beings. Thinking this over, how my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Lord, noble wisdom treasure. So these two lines, thinking this over, how well my destiny fulfilled, you can see this is where the title of the prayer comes from, destiny fulfilled. And these two lines are like a refrain. At the end of almost all the following verses, these two lines appear. So this is, Lama Tsongkhapa is kind of dwelling on this again and again. How fortunate, how incredibly fortunate I've been in this life. So ostensibly, this prayer was written towards the end of Tsongkhapa's life. And he's looking back at all the things he's done in his life and feeling incredibly fortunate and rejoicing. And also, seeing his own good fortune at having been able to do so much virtuous things in the course of practicing Dharma in his life, then it's also a way of reflecting on the kindness of his guru. And so especially his guru being Manjushri, right? So he says, thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Remember at the beginning, and I think at the end, he says how every aspect of good fortune I've enjoyed in this life and all I've been able to do, all is due to the kindness of my guru, appearing in this aspect of Manjushri. So then, so verse 4. So I highlighted the 4 lines of this verse here because these 4 lines, this verse, these days His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he quotes it almost every teaching he gives as an example of how we should try to apply ourselves to Dharma practice. Right? So this is Lama Tsongkhapa speaking. In the beginning, I sought much learning. In the middle, all teachings dawned on me as spiritual exhortation. In the end, I practiced day and night. I dedicated all this virtue for the Dharma to flourish. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Lord, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. So this is an outline for the rest of the prayer, right? So remember I said there's 3 sections to this prayer, 3 main sections. So this is the beginning, middle, and end. In the beginning, I sought out much learning. So it's talking about how in the early part of his life, Lama Tsongkhapa, usually we say until he's about 36 or 40. There's different ways to divide it, but for the first part of his life, Lama Tsongkhapa spent, his main thing he was doing was reading text and going around requesting and receiving teachings from different teachers in different areas of central Tibet. So in the beginning, I sought out much learning. So I mean studying, contemplation. In the middle, all teachings dawned on me as spiritual exhortation. Right? So we can see the difficulty in our own lives of, conjoining, intellectual study with real heartfelt practice, right? Putting what we learn about into practice in our own lives in some way. So that's what he's talking about here. In the middle of my life, all of the different things I've been studying, all the spiritual teachings I've been studying, they dawned on me, means it appeared to my mind how to put them into practice. Right? When we first study Dharma teachings, we don't actually know how to practice. But gradually, through more and more familiarization, thinking about things more, experimenting, then we gradually learn how to put all of the Buddha's teachings into practice in some shape or form. So he said, in the middle, all teachings dawned on me as spiritual practice. Remember, this is one of the qualities of the Lam-Rim, is one of the excellences. There's 4 excellences, I believe. One of the excellences of the Lam-Rim is it shows us how all Buddha's teachings are meant as aspects of spiritual practice at different stages of the path, right? And then finally at the end, so at the end of his life, I practiced day and night. So he's saying once all spiritual teachings dawned on me as kind of as exhortations to practice, then I put effort into simply practicing day and night. Yeah, I'm not sure where, I forget where, actually this was an exam question on one of my exams early this year. And I still don't remember. But it's where you demarcate, the middle of Tsongkhapa's life and the end of his life. I forget. Yeah, okay. Thinking this over, yeah, I read that already. So then the first part of his life, the quest for extensive learning. Verse 5. With the darkness of confusion concerning the points to adopt or reject, not dispelled by the lamp of perfect learning. If you do not know even the path, what need to speak of entering the supreme city of liberation? So Tsongkhapa is saying in the early part of his life, he was, his mind was shrouded in the darkness of confusion. Not only, not knowing how to achieve freedom from samsara, but not even knowing the path that goes in that direction, right? The path to achieve that. And then verse 6, therefore, not content with a partial or superficial understanding of the treatise of the invincible Lord of Dharma, Ajita or Maitreya. So the Lord of Dharma is an epithet of Maitreya. I'm not sure why it says Ajita, I'm not sure about that. And those of the great sages widely renowned in India as the 6 ornaments and the 2 supreme ones. I studied them all in great detail, right? So this point His Holiness emphasizes a lot. Not content with a partial or superficial understanding. So one of the qualities of Tsongkhapa's compositions, the commentaries and texts written by Tsongkhapa, is almost inevitably, they always contain an outline or a description of the entire path, from guru devotion at the beginning up to the state of no more learning at the end. Even like a text like the great treatise on the path of mantra. At the very beginning, first Tsongkhapa lays out the entire path. Or let me think of another example. Even Tsongkhapa's commentary on entering the middle way by Chandrakirti. At some point, usually in the introduction at some point, Tsongkhapa will lay out the entire Lam-Rim, right, in brief, and then explain how the text he's writing at that time, how it fits into that path. So the 2 things His Holiness emphasizes is, one, when we practice the Buddhist path, it's not enough just to use some pith instruction, right? Some very brief, abbreviated instruction that we learn and try to practice outside of an understanding of the entirety of Buddhist teachings, right? So to practice effectively in any way, whether we are practicing a pith instruction or not, or whether we do extensive study of the 5 great treatises, it's important to have an understanding of the broad outline and the entire scope of the Buddhist teachings, like knowing what are the 4 noble truths, how those are related to the 2 truths, how that's related to the 3 jewels of refuge, right? And then knowing about the 3 baskets, knowing about the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma, knowing the outlines kind of for the entire Lam-Rim. So all of those things are important for having a broad, understanding of the entirety of Buddhist teachings. And then within that, we know what to practice at any given time and in different situations, right? So His Holiness emphasizes that because there's an errors that many in the past have made of just, both students and teachers, of just emphasizing some very short pith instruction, and then not paying attention to, all of the sutras and tantras, of the Kangyur, and then all of the ancient Indian commentaries on those, the entire Tengyur. So His Holiness makes the point that, and His Holiness is copying. Who else makes that point? Oh, I just read it the other day. I forget. There's one of the ancient Indian masters, maybe Asanga or Buddha Palita. They make the same point, that if it's enough just to practice some very specific pith instruction and not pay attention to the rest of the Buddha's teachings, then why did the Buddha teach so much? Then there was no point to that. But Buddhists don't make mistakes, right? So it's important to pay attention to all of the Buddha's teachings. So that's what he means here when he says, therefore, not content with partial or superficial understanding of the treatise of the Invincible Lord, Maitreya, or of the great stages of India, the 6 ornaments and the 2 supreme ones. Yeah, the two supreme ones I'm pretty sure is Nagarjuna and Asanga. The 6 ornaments, yeah, I don't remember exactly, but we don't have so much time now, so I'll carry on to verse 7. Especially for an ordinary person, especially for an ordinary person, the sole way to determine the precise reality of things are the treatise on valid reasoning. So this is pramana, valid cognition, by Dharmakirti and Dignaga. So with much effort, I studied their difficult points again and again. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Lord Noble Wisdom Treasure. So here I think His Holiness emphasized, well, His Holiness didn't comment on this morning, but he did emphasize this morning that that's one of the major themes in Tsongkhapa's life, is his emphasis on studying the treatise of valid cognition. Because there was a wrong view in the past in Tibet, and maybe even in India, that the treatise on valid cognitions are primarily important or primarily used for refuting the views of non-Buddhists. If you already accept Buddhism, then you don't need to study them, right? But that's totally a misconception, because as Tsongkhapa says here, especially for understanding the ultimate view of reality, means emptiness, it's important to know how to use precisely logic and reasoning. Therefore, it's important to study the reasons of valid cognition. But we'll come back to this later. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Noble Wisdom Treasure. And I want to emphasize here, destiny, this word destiny, it's a little problematic. Dokcho dun legma. Because destiny in English, because English is associated with Christian ideas usually. We have the sense that destiny means like, well, something was destined to happen, means inevitably it was going to happen, which will give you the impression that even if Tsongkhapa hadn't made effort to do anything, if he just kind of sat back and drank tea, like all of this would have happened because that was his destiny. But it's not like that, right? In Tibetan, the title is Dokjo Dung Legma. So Dokjo means like realizations, and Dumba means like my aspiration or my intention. So really, a Dokjo Dung Legma. So really, it's a kind of a different way to translate it would be more like thinking this over, how well my aspirations or how well my intentions, my desires were fulfilled. So it means Tsongkhapa had an aspiration to do things, and then he made effort to do that. It's not like it was just destined to happen, something like that. Okay, then verse 8. Though I toiled in the treatise of Sutra and Tantra, when practicing and expounding their profound meaning, I found my view had not advanced far beyond those who had learned nothing and who knew even less. Right? So this should encourage us. Although Tsongkhapa, who's like this genius, brilliant mind, incredible immigrants, although he toiled, means worked very hard day and night for a long time to study and understand the treatise on the sutras and the tantras and the commentaries on those. When practicing and expounding, so when practicing myself or even explaining them to others, their most profound meaning means emptiness here. I found my view of emptiness had not advanced far beyond those who had learned nothing and who knew even less, right? So there's a famous anecdote from Tsongkhapa's life where, towards the end of the first part of his life when he studied, so when he's around in his mid-30s, around 35, 36, Tsongkhapa was consulting with Manjushri via a medium, Lama Omapa. And Lama Tsongkhapa asked Manjushri, the view of emptiness that I've cultivated up to this point, is it the middle way consequentialist view, or is it the middle way autonomous view, or is it a mind-only view, or which view is it? And Manjushri sort of says that Tsongkhapa, like dismissively, like, your view is not even a Buddhist view, right? Much less like a view of the middle way. You need to spend more time like studying the works of Chandrakirti and Nagarjuna and meditating. So at that point, Tsongkhapa was already quite a famous scholar in central Tibet, and he was giving teachings that were being attended by hundreds, if not thousands of people. Right? He was already kind of beginning a renaissance of Buddhist study and practice in Tibet. And at that time, Manjushri told him, it's more important now for you to go into retreat, go into isolation and meditate and do retreat. than it is for you to practice. But Umapa, who's like Lama Tsongkhapa at that time his teacher and also medium, sort of says to Manjushri, but won't that be very, very harmful to the Buddhist teachings if Tsongkhapa, this famous teacher, suddenly leaves all of his students and goes into retreat? And Manjushri says something like, you let me worry about what's beneficial for Buddhist teachings. He sort of tells Umapa off a little bit. Says, I know, just follow my advice. So at that time, at the age of 36, it was Lama Tsongkhapa left with his, it's called the eight pure friends, basically, or eight pure eight ones of it, and his retinue. So Lama Tsongkhapa, I think, with 7 or 8 of his closest disciples, and actually people who were named by Manjushri himself, they went into solitary retreat for about the next 4 years. Although they were kind of wandering retreats, they would move from place to place while doing retreat. Okay, so now we're on verse 9. So then I studied thoroughly all the essential keys to include the correct view. No, sorry, to induce the correct view. So then I studied thoroughly all the essential keys to induce the correct view through the subtle dialectical reasoning that distinguishes the profound, especially the treatise of Nagarjuna, and resolved all my doubts completely. Right. So Tsongkhapa is saying, then using the logic and reasoning in the text of Dharmakirti and Dignaga, I read all of the treatise and the commentary, the treatise by Nagarjuna. So there's the Riktsok Tuk, the 6 treatises on logic, but actually it's on the reasoning establishing emptiness by Nagarjuna, and then the commentaries on those by, Buddhapalita, Bhadraveka, Asanga, and Chandakirti primarily, but primarily Chandakirti. So he studied those extensively over, from about 36 to about the age of 40. At the age of 40 is when Tsongkhapa realized emptiness, if I'm not mistaken. So then it resolved all his doubts completely and realized emptiness. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled, thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. There are 2 vehicles to travel to perfect enlightenment. The profound Vajra vehicle and the perfection vehicle. So the perfection vehicle means the sutra vehicle, and the Vajra vehicle means tantra, the vehicle of practicing tantra. Secret mantra is said to be much superior to the perfection vehicle. This is as well known as the sun and moon, right? So everybody knows about the sun and moon. At that time, everybody in Tibet knows that the tantra is a superior path to sutra because it's quicker, right? Quicker way to achieve enlightenment, and a quicker way, therefore, to benefit sentient beings. While accepting these words to be true, there are some who do not ask, what is the profound vehicle, right? So what is Tantra? And yet assume the mantle of scholars, right? So there's some people who claim to be scholars, and they claim, and they say again and again and again, oh, the vehicle, the vehicle of Tantra, the path of Tantra is superior to the path of Sutra. But then they never bother to ask, well, what is Tantra exactly, right? How foolish. If such people, so verse 12, if such people are supposed to be intelligent, then who are the dull-witted? If such people are supposed to be intelligent, then who are the dull-witted? How extraordinary that anyone should neglect an unexcelled path, so difficult to meet, right? So why is Tsongkhapa saying this? Because at Tsongkhapa's time, there are many people who, most, serious practitioners claim to be practicing Tantra, but it seems many people, they didn't study extensively before that, not to mention they didn't study extensively these supplementary Tantras, and then the ancient Indian commentaries on those and so forth. So they didn't, most people, without studying extensively Tantra, so again, they just take from one Tantra or another Tantra or some specific instruction from Tantra and practice that without having a broad understanding of what the whole path of Tantra is and how the different aspects of it relate to one another, and what one should practice first, and then practice second, and then practice third, and how to integrate all those into a coherent path, right? So if the danger is if people do this generation after generation, so this applies especially to, those in the audience who are Westerners, you know, or even in modern India, where the, you know, tradition of Buddhism, like in the West, Buddhism has never spread before. So while it's newly spreading, in India where it's been lost and it's kind of experiencing a renaissance. But in either case, you know, there's a danger that if we just take bits of Buddhist teachings and emphasize just that and then practice that and then teach that to, you know, one's own students, you know, if a teacher teaches that to their own students in the future, and then those students just practice that fifth instruction and that's all they teach their students, then gradually the whole lineage of Buddhism dies out. I mean, all the different lineages of Buddhism die out on the one hand, and the wisdom understanding the entire Buddhist path deteriorates from generation to generation, and then thereby, you know, the Buddhist teachings decline. Okay, so then verse 13. Therefore, I entered the supreme vehicle of the victorious ones, the Vajra vehicle, even rarer than the Buddhas. So remember, of the 1,000 Buddhas of this countless eon, this fortunate eon, of the 1,000 Buddhas to come to this world system in this fortunate eon, only 4 of them will teach Tantra, right? Therefore, I entered the supreme vehicle of the victorious ones, the Vajra vehicle, even rarer than the Buddhas, a profound treasury of the 2 spiritual feats, and I studied it long with much effort. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, our noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Not knowing the paths of the 3 lower tantras and deciding that highest yoga tantra is the supreme of all classes of tantra is just making an assertion, right? So that's just fool's talk if you don't know what you're talking about. You say highest yoga, which applies to me, I must say. You say highest yoga tantra is the best, but there's 4 classes of tantra and you don't know anything about the lower 3. Then, you know, saying that highest yoga tantra is the best, it's just it's like a parrot mimicking other people's words. You have no idea what it means. Realizing this, I familiarized myself both generally and specifically with the 3 genres of action tantra, such as, so here I find really, whenever I read this prayer, I find incredibly humbling, because here and below also, Lama Tsongkhapa mentions, you know, he names all these different tantras and commentaries on tantra. So these are mostly tantras, you know, that are said to be the word of the Buddha, and also commentaries on those tantras, which are also the word of the Buddha, although sometimes the Buddha appearing as, you know, different deities of that mandala and then teaching those tantras, right? So, but why I find it humbling is because Tsongkhapa names all these tantras, many of which I never even heard of the names of these tantras, not to mention, you know, study them or receive teachings on them, right? So it's really impressive to see all, especially the tantras Tsongkhapa taught. And also note here, you know, so this is still the first section of the prayer where Tsongkhapa is speaking about what he studied, but there's only one verse on studying the perfections, right? The method side of the Bodhisattva path. There's one verse on studying pramana. There's just, I think, 2 verses on studying emptiness. And then there's like 7 verses on studying Tantra, right? So you can see for Tsongkhapa, Tantra was extremely important. And he put a lot of energy, time and effort into studying, teaching, writing commentaries on, and practicing Tantra. So realizing this, I familiarized myself both generally and specifically with the 3 genres of action Tantra, such as general secret Tantra. I'm not even going to try the Sanskrit, right? True fulfillment, the Tantra requested by Subahu, and the later concentration. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very, very much, Lord, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Within the 2nd class of Tantra, performance Tantra, I studied the main Tantra, manifest enlightenment of Vedachana, and ascertained thoroughly the precise orientation of all performance tantras. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Within the 3rd class of Tantra, Yoga Tantra, I studied the main tantras, the glorious compendium of reality, the explanatory tantras, such as Vajra Pinnacle, and enjoyed the feast of Yoga Tantra. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Within the 4th class of Tantra, the highest Yoga Tantra, I studied the root and explanatory tantras and others, renowned as the sun and moon among Indian sages, the secret community, so this is Guhya Samajana, the king of tantras, a father tantra, and the yogini tantras of Vajra laughter, which is related to Hebadra, and supreme bliss. So that's Samvara, means chakra samvara, Heruka, commonly known as Heruka. I also studied the Wheel of Time Tantra, so that's Kalachakra Tantra, unique amongst tantras, an original system of explanation, different from other sutras on tantras, along with its illuminating exegesis, the stainless light. So that's the stainless light. That's a commentary on the Kalachakra Tantra, also taught by Kalachakra, I believe. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Noble Lord Wisdom Treasure. This is the first chapter telling how I first sought out extensive learning. It's interesting to note here in relation to Tsongkhapa's study of Tantra, one of Tsongkhapa's main teachers was Rendawa, right? Jetsun Rendawa is Tsongkhapa's most important teacher for Buddhist logic, valid cognition, and for the view of emptiness. But Rendawa did not accept the Kalachakra Tantra as a valid teaching of the Buddha. He thought it was something made up later on and actually a fabrication or a kind of faulty teaching or a degenerate teaching that was said to be Buddhist, but not in fact Buddhist. But so one of Tsongkhapa's main teachers says, Kalachakra is not a valid teaching of the Buddha, and yet Tsongkhapa, he disregarded that, right? He studied it and had a look at it, I guess, and he thought it was a valid teaching of the Buddha. So he studied and practiced it. So that, I think I like that anecdote from Tsongkhapa's life, because it helps us remember that although we might have one teacher or many teachers, but it's okay to disagree with our teachers sometimes on very important points. Like as a Dharma practitioner, we have the freedom to use our own intelligence but we shouldn't just blindly disagree with our teachers. We should do so based on what we feel are good reasons. But it's okay to think for ourselves and then, respectfully disagree, right? So in the much later part of his life, in the middle part of his life, Tsongkhapa, there was a long period when he didn't see Rendawa. But in the later part of his life, probably when he's in his 50s or so, and Rendawa, his teacher, because Rendawa was about 15 years older than Tsongkhapa. Rendawa was quite old and nearing the end of his life. They met again, and Tsongkhapa paid extreme veneration and respect and requested more teachings from Rendawa. Okay, so now the second part. All teachings dawn as spiritual instruction. Then, with a firm, intense, enduring faith in Manjugosha, his Manjushri, supreme and banishing the darkness from the disciples' minds, I prayed in order that all scriptures might dawn as spiritual instruction, and strove to fulfill the necessity of conditions. So here comes in more the aspect of faith and prayer and requesting, right? So Tsongkhapa made strong prayers that all of what he'd studied might dawn or might appear as spiritual instructions, as instruction for how to practice. That he might understand how to put into practice everything he studied so far, and strove to fulfill the necessary conditions. So that means the practices of accumulation, like making mandala offerings, reciting refuge prayers, and so forth, and also purification, doing Vajrasattva mantras and prostrations and so forth. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Noble Lord, Wisdom Treasure. And 21. Striving thus, I found a special conviction in the stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lam-Rim, transmitted from Nagarjuna and the Sangha, and hence the perfection of wisdom, the best scriptures on the profound dawned upon me as spiritual instructions. Right, so Tsongkhapa took from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras both that which is implicitly taught, basically the 8 realizations, the sort of the path of the 8 realizations, means the method side of the path, or basically the Lam-Rim, you could say, except for the Perfection of Wisdom, and also the wisdom side of the path, right? As taught by Nagarjuna and the Sangha, and then he saw how to practice. So the method side of the path, like Bodhicitta and all the first 5 of the 6 perfections, and then also the wisdom side of the path. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, Noble Lord, Wisdom Treasure. In this northern land, there are many, regardless of whether they have studied the text on epistemology or not, who say there is no graduated practice of path leading to enlightenment in the compendium of valid cognition, the corpus of the 7 treaties. Tsongkhapa is coming back again here to emphasize how important it is to study logic and reasoning, as taught in Dharmakirti's compendium of valid cognition. Or actually, I think that's Dignaga's. And then Dharmakirti has a commentary on it. So there are many people who say that those Buddhist treatises on logic, they're not important. They don't show the path to enlightenment. And then 23, but they also take as authoritative the permission granted by Manjushri to Dignaga, yes, by Dignaga, when he explicitly said, write this book. In the future, it will become the eye for all wandering beings, right? So people accept that Manjushri told Dignaga to write, his treatise on valid cognition, and that this book will become the eye to the world, showing, how to be free from samsara, how to achieve enlightenment. And yet they say that that text does not show the path to liberation and enlightenment. Isn't that contradictory? So 24, seeing this to be completely illogical, I especially looked into this and found that the pramana samuchaya's opening homage is established by the Pramana Siddhi chapter of Dharmakirti's Pramana Vartika. So there's a lot of pramana here, right? Through the forward and reverse logical procedures. So this homage, actually, it's the opening verse of homage in Dignaga's work on logic, main work on logic. And it's explained, the entire, basically, second chapter of Dharmakirti's commentary of Dignaga's work explains that homage. So that homage, basically, it praises the Buddha for basically having brought together the causes for enlightenment, right? So on one hand, it indicates that, the Buddha was not primordially enlightened. It means like he was not like an enlightened being from the very beginning. The Buddha was an ordinary being like us in the past, and then by practicing the path, he gradually accumulated the causes to achieve enlightenment and thereby achieved it. So then he discusses like, well, what are the causes to enlightenment, and how does a person achieve those from life to life? So the entire path is explained in a way that, and then 25, we're running out of time very quickly. I was planning to be done with this, explaining this by now. So I'll just read through the rest kind of quickly and then give you a chance for questions. So 25, as proving Bhagawan Buddha to be an authoritative master for those seeking liberation. From this, I found, so that second, or that verse and the commentary on it, proves the Buddha to be an authoritative teacher for those seeking liberation. From this, I found a deep conviction that this teaching alone is the forward for those seeking total freedom. So basically saying, without understanding logic and reasoning and valid cognition, you cannot achieve liberation. You cannot understand the path. Therefore you can't practice the path correctly. As such, all the essential points gathered as one of the paths of the two vehicles unfolded through the path of reasoning. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Then I brought together Bodhisattva level and the ornament of sutras, and with much hard and proper work, all the treatises of the invincible Lord, Dharma Lord, Maitreya, and those following him arose as spiritual instruction. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Relying especially on the compendium of practices, so it's by Shantideva, which grants certainty on all the points of the path, with its graded arrangement of the vast and profound teaching. I saw clearly the many points of the supreme treatise of Nagarjuna, such as compendium of sutras, as the stages of practice. That's a text by Nagarjuna. I don't think it's translated yet, but it's very similar to Shantideva's compendium of practices. Basically, it brings together quotations from Mahayana sutras, showing, explaining different points of the graduated path to enlightenment. 29. Then relying on Buddha Guya's well-explained practical instructions on the Dhyanottara and Vajraverochana Bisambodhi, all the points of the path dawn well as spiritual instruction. That I'm really not familiar with. I need to learn about. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Seeing how the essentials of the path of the Sri Tattva Samgraha are incorporated in the three samadhis was not that hard, but for the difficult way to meditate on the profound in that path, I relied on the great Pandit, Buddha Guya's correct explanation. I think this is about Tantra, those two verses, the lower Tantras. 31, which combined the root, explanatory, and subsidiary yoga tantras and the stages of meditation's proper explanations, of the profound practices of the three Tantra classes, and the darkness in my mind was dispelled. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. 32, the ultimate of all well-spoken teachings of the mighty sage, Buddha, is the glorious highest Yoga Tantra, of which the greatest and most profound. On this, the supreme philosopher Nagarjuna said, the essentials of the path are sealed in the root Tantra by the 6 limits and the 4 ways, and thus they must be understood through a master's instruction, following the explanatory tantras. So that the 6 limits and the 4 ways, I can't rattle them off the tip of my tongue. But basically it's saying how we need to distinguish between like the interpretive meaning of the text and the definitive meaning, the implied meaning and the explicit meaning, and so forth, right? The meaning of the words and the actual kind of meaning, the meaning of the individual words, so to speak, and the meaning of the words as you take them together or in context, kind of like that. So we need to interpret text, the Tantra text in that way in order to draw out the correct meaning. And then 34, acknowledging this was crucial, I acquainted myself for a long time with even the smallest text, ultimate core instructions contained in the concise sadhana, the lamp of integrated practices, and the stages of presentation, and so on. Also, relying on the lamp-like illuminator of the root tantra and combining them with the 5 great explanatory tantras, I studied with enormous effort and discovered the 2 stages of the Guhya Samaja in general. So that's the generation and completion stage, and especially all the essentials of the perfection stage. So here the generation and completion of perfection stages. Yeah. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. Then 36, through this, the essential point of many tantras, such as Samvada, Hevadra, and Kalachakra, dawned on me as spiritual instructions. I've explained these elsewhere. Here, I just show a door for the discerning. Thinking this, so it's saying for the intelligent, you'll notice what Tsongkhapa is mentioned here, and then go investigate it further and learn more about it. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. This is the 2nd chapter, or the 2nd part, on the middle period of his life, when all scriptural traditions arose as spiritual instruction, constant practice and total dedication. So 37, having thus become a treasure of instructions, I trained to familiarize myself with a path comprising the common path and the exclusive path with its 2 stages, the 2 Mahayana systems. So the common path means the path of Sutra, and the exclusive path means the path of Tantra, with its 2 stages means the generation and completion stage of the 2 Mahayana systems. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. It is said that the Ganges-like prayers of the Bodhisattvas are all contained within the prayers to uphold the holy Dharma. Thus, whatever virtue I accumulated was dedicated to the spread of the sage's teaching. Thinking this over, how well my destiny is fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord, wisdom treasure. So this is a good point for our own practice. What he's saying, that it's said that all the Ganges-like prayers, so all the infinite prayers of the Bodhisattvas, have infinite diversity of prayers and vastness of prayers of the Bodhisattvas, are all contained within the prayers to uphold the holy Dharma, right? So if you want to make one dedication prayer on a day when you're tired and out of time at the end of the day, dedicate to be able to uphold the Dharma. Why? Because the holy Dharma benefits, it benefits sentient beings in an infinite way, from generation to generation, in boundless different forms. So he's saying, I dedicate whatever virtue I accumulated, I dedicated to that, others, and that I myself be able to uphold the Buddha's teachings. This is the 3rd chapter, so it's very short. How at the end I practiced day and night and dedicated all virtues to the spread of the teachings. Right? So then just a conclusion, 39, in order to increase my own virtue enormously and to show properly the correct way to the many fortunate beings who possess a discerning mind, I've written this account of my education and my practice. By the store of virtue attained through this process, may all beings, through this same procedure, maintain the unexcelled conduct of the Buddha and enter the path that pleases the victorious ones. Colophon, written by the Eastern monk, reduce the size here, Tsongkhapa, Lo Tsongkhapa, at the Triumph of Virtue Monastery, so that means Ganden Monastery on the Great Nomad Mountain, with Kashipa Rinchen Pel as scribe. Okay, so that is our teaching, and now you have 3 minutes to ask questions. And then we'll dedicate. So any questions? Okay, there's only 4 of you in the Zoom room, and Shanti. Come on, Maya, I know you must have a question. Carl, Elizabeth, any questions? Venerable Ciliana? Venerable Ciliana was my very first Buddhist instructor in the Tibetan Mahayana tradition. I don't know if you remember Venerable Ciliana at HBMC by the clock tower. That was the very first time I took a course in Tibetan Buddhism. So thank you very much. All of whatever I've benefit I received from them is all due to your kindness. So thank you. Hold on. Who has it? Do you have Maya? You have a question?
Oh yeah. No, I just wanted to. It's interesting. Well, first of all, thank you. That was very. I wish we had time to also go back and go in depth also for the last ones, but it's interesting how relevant those texts are for today as well. Like a lot of debates that we have about things like how to do, what to do, how to think, what to study more, and it's just amazing. So thank you so much, and I wish maybe next time we will have some time to go in depth also to the one that we didn't have time to do somehow. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, one point His Holiness made this morning was how excellent it is just to study even the things that we study in the first 2 years of the Geshe program. We study what's called like the small, middle, and middle collections of reasoning, and then Lodik and Tarik. I mean, most of you have heard of Lodik and Tarik, mind and awareness and signs and reasons. So those are kind of the introductory topics. But just through studying those in 2 years, you get a very solid basis. His Holiness said, like, you accumulate all the perfect conditions for knowing how to use logic and reasoning to then apply that to the rest of the Buddhist teachings of the path. So that's something that I think it's a little bit of a weakness in the way we approach Buddhism in the West now, and you could also say in India. People tend to gravitate more towards things like relaxing practices like mindfulness meditation, or loving kindness and compassion, and maybe kind of sadhanas and prayers. And even when they study, they like to study emptiness and like to study the Lam-Rim without actually laying the proper groundwork by understanding basic Buddhist logic and reasoning first. So that's something we could work on. Any other comments?
I was wondering, just one thing, like, because you said that there is this like a few parts of Tantra that we don't study much about. Do you think that there is something that you can find, or like some commentaries to read about, or books, just to know a little bit more about that too?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's not, especially there's a lot of books and commentaries and teachings about highest yoga tantra, but there's not much about those three, the 3 lower tantras. And Lama Tsongkhapa here is kind of saying, unless you understand how the 3 lower tantras work, you won't really understand what the highest yoga tantra is about and how to practice it properly. So the books, there's a couple books by Jeffrey Hopkins. Lama Tsongkhapa, not long after he wrote the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, then his disciples were so impressed by that, so amazed by that work, because nothing really in Tibetan Buddhism had ever been written before. Such a detailed explanation of how to practice the entire sutra path. People had never seen something like that before. So his disciples were so impressed, and peers were so impressed by the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, that shortly afterwards they asked him to write something similar for the whole path of Tantra. Right, so it's just a couple of years after that Tsongkhapa composed the great treatise on the stages of the path of Tantra. But that work has never been translated in its entirety into English yet. Right, it's still untranslated. even though there's many, the first, I can see very silly on rolling your eyes. The first couple sections of it were translated by Jeffrey Hopkins in, I think there's 2 books, like Tantra in Tibet, and there's one other one. Those are just the first couple sections of that on the lower tantras, right? But the highest yoga tantra section and the yoga tantra section, I'm not sure about. I think the yoga tantra section is translated, but the highest yoga tantra section of that is not translated yet, to my knowledge. I might be mistaken, but I don't think it is. But yeah, but you know, commentaries on like, you know, on like Medicine Buddha, that belongs to the lower classes of tantra. On like Thousand on Chenrezig, commentary on new names. Those are all, I mean, those are all regarded to with regard to the lower tantras. Right? So.
Yeah.
Elizabeth has.
Yeah. Can I just ask what text you might recommend in English for those first 2 years of study that you do as your part of your Geshe course?
Oh, yeah, good question.
On reasoning and logic.
And logic, yeah, good question.
Because that's what I really struggle with.
Yeah, you know, a good book on Buddhist logic that's not, you know, that's kind of introductory level. You know, I don't think there is one. You're actually.
You have to write it.
Yeah, what? I have to write it. You know, I have thought of it, you know, actually, because there's one young monk, I mean, not young, but there's one new monk in our house now. He's actually studying the middle path of reasoning. I'm helping him work through it. And, you know, Geshe Graham Woodhouse, who's on Nalanda, he's translated part of that, the middle path of reasoning. So, you know, the best places to look, just take these names.
Yeah.
I think Venerable Fedor in Germany.
How do you
He
spell?
has a web, Fedor, F-E-D-O-R.
Yeah.
Venerable Fedor.
Yeah.
He has a website called Happy Monks Publications.
Oh, great.
Happy Monk Publications.
Yeah.
So he's translated, I think he's translated most of the first path of reasoning. And you can get from that website. And then Geshe Graham Woodhouse.
Fantastic.
Geshe Graham Woodhouse, you know him?
Yeah, I think
You're
I do.
English.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he's translated most of the middle path of reasoning, and he also has a website. I just found that out recently.
Okay.
So it's probably free, available for free download there.
Yeah.
But you know, I have to kind of give you a user's warning.
I
Both
know.
of those texts, they're not really like explanatory texts. They're texts that are used for people to teach debate class and then as a basis for debate. So if you just read them, you won't understand much. You know, there's another, I can give you another name, but well, there's another name, Daniel Perdue, right? He's a Western scholar, Daniel Perdue, and he has a book called Debate in Tibetan Buddhism. Okay. Which is actually, it's his PhD thesis, and it reads very much like a PhD thesis. It's not like, yeah, it's not so user-friendly either. But Daniel Perdue has a second book that was published later. Maybe Shanti, you can look it up and put it in the chat, which I don't remember the name because I've never used it. But it's kind of a synopsis of the main points from that first book, and it's much more user-friendly, apparently. So that would be a good resource. This Daniel Perdue's second book, which I don't know the name of. But it's published much later. You can find it. And then another book for well, yeah, you asked me for the name of one book, and I'll give you 10, right? But another book is what's that one? Mind? Is it? You know it, Maya. Mind. What do we use for loading usually? Mind. No, Cutting Through Appearances, right? I think Cutting Through Appearances. And is there one called Mind in Tibetan Buddhism? Maybe Shanti, you can put these up in the chat.
Yeah. Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. Cutting Through Appearances is about tenets.
Oh, sorry. So not.
And Venerable Tarpa has translated some things from Collected Topics, which has a few things on debate.
Okay. So this Mind in Tibetan Buddhism is about Lorik, or mind and awareness. That's very good. Yeah, but any of these things, just reading a book is really not going to get you there. You need to find some kind of to kind of help you through it. And hopefully some like-minded friends to give you moral support, emotional support, because they're difficult. They're a little bit difficult things. Okay, let's dedicate very briefly. We've already gone over time, but thank you all so much for joining. And then we'll just read this, the Lam-Rim dedication prayer, also composed by Tsongkhapa. It's the few verses of dedication he wrote at the end of the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So I'll just share my screen and we can read that together, and then we conclude. All right, I have to find out where it is here. Okay, here it is. Final Lam-Rim dedication. From my two types of merits, vast is space, that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become a chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the points of the path as I have discerned them, may I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this graded path to enlightenment completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of all the Buddhas and their children. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. So in church, in all times and all directions, by that, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering and have every happiness up to full enlightenment immediately right now with the 1 second's delay. For that, and for that purpose, may all of our actions be only pleasing to our holy gurus. May all our gurus, especially as hosts the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, have long and stable lives, and may all of their enlightened activities flourish, and especially may Root Institute, the host of this session, may all of its activities, its charitable projects and education projects and Dharma projects all flourish. And may all of your own prayers be fulfilled exactly as you like. Okay, so thank you very much. And thank you for joining. And I hope we meet again.